So this evening we come to the 16th chapter in the Life Divine, the triple status of supermind. The context this evening is interesting for us, and we'll save some comments for later on, but this is the 29th of March, which commemorates the day on which the mother and Sri Aurobindo met for the first time in Pondicherry 101 years ago. We'll come back to that. There is, as always, a motto taken from a sacred source which opens the chapter. This again has been revised by Sri Aurobindo. The first two are taken from the Gita and the last from the Rig Veda. Translated into English, it reads, "Myself is that which supports all beings and constitutes their existence. I am the self which abides within all beings." Gita. The next, "Three powers of light uphold three luminous worlds divine." Originally in the Arya, there was only this reference to chapter 9, shloka 5, which he translated, "My self-existent being is that which supports all existences, and that which dwells in them, and that which constitutes their existence." You can see it is a much more compressed and actually better translation that he's substituted here. The second citation was not there, but he found, possibly with the help of A.B. Purani, this citation which would illuminate the idea of the triple world of the supramental consciousness. And so finding it, he places it as the second of the two citations, one group from the Gita and the second from the Rig Veda. We don't need to summarize, because this opening statement summarizes his whole position in the Life Divine to this point. And it begins, "Before we pass to this easier understanding of the world we inhabit from the standpoint of an apprehending truth consciousness, which sees things as would an individual soul freed from the limitations of mentality and admitted to participate in the action of the divine supermind, we must pause and resume briefly what we have realized or can yet realize of the consciousness of the Lord, the Ishvara, as he develops the world by his Maya out of the original concentrated unity of his being." There's interesting material here. So, taking up from the last chapter, the apprehending truth consciousness, that aspect of it which objectifies, but which places itself primarily in a subjective position, so that it goes out and apprehends that which it objectifies, so that it can come to know it in the play of consciousness and delight, is a stage or a poise of the supermind, as he suggested, which is closer to mentality because it leans upon the possibility of individuality, standing back from the innate oneness of the supramental consciousness. So philosophically, he opens this chapter with a statement that is looking upwards from a consciousness which is aspirational or ascendant from the mind, aspiring to get to that supermind and to come into some contact with it. And now here comes his summary. We have started with the assertion of all existence as one being whose essential nature is consciousness, one consciousness whose active nature is force or will. And this being is delight, this consciousness is delight, this force or will is delight. Eternal and inalienable bliss of existence, bliss of consciousness, bliss of force or will, whether concentrated in itself and at rest or active and creative. This is God, and this is ourselves and our essential, our non-phenomenal being. So he restates that this is the nature of the divine. If we can say anything about that unnameable, unknowable one, because we can't turn it into an object, we cannot know it, because it exceeds all formulation, we cannot name it. It is that it is. It is a being, conscious of itself, and its nature of consciousness is also force or will. It is not blank or static awareness. It is awareness that is full of potency and can move. And this being is also delight. It is ananda. So this is the basis of it. And an existence housed in bliss, an existence conscious of itself, blissfully aware of its own being. Concentrated in silence, static, and unbridgeable, unpartitable oneness, or extended, thrown out into manifestation. It is still itself. He continues, concentrated in itself, it possesses, or rather is the essential, eternal, inalienable bliss, active and creative. It possesses, or rather becomes the delight of the play of existence, the play of consciousness, the play of force and will. That play is the universe, and that delight is the sole cause, motive, and object of cosmic existence. So it is a play of consciousness. This is a phrase that gets great usage in coming decades. And there is only one purpose in the play of that consciousness within the context of this soul being, and that is for the pursuit of delight. Inalienable. Remember how he uses this term, taken from the field of political science, as it were. Inalienable, that which can't be taken away from, that which cannot be made external to oneself. It cannot be alienated from you. So this is the nature of the divine existence. He continues, the divine consciousness possesses that play and delight eternally and inalienably. Our essential being, our real self, which is concealed from us from the false self or mental ego, also enjoys that play and delight eternally and inalienably, and cannot indeed do otherwise, since it is one in being with the divine consciousness. So, what is true of the divine in toto is true of the divine in particularity. Each one of us enjoys that same inalienability in our own depths. We are one with that delight. We are enjoying that conscious play of existence. He will explain later how arises this mental ego, this presumptive self, which we will set aside as we outgrow it. This isn't the time to explore that. Rather, he's paying attention and focusing directly upon what is true there in that supramental awareness. So he continues, If we aspire, therefore, to a divine life, we cannot attain to it by any other way than by unveiling this veiled self in us, by mounting from our present status in the false self or mental ego to a higher status in the true self, the Atman, by entering into that unity with the divine consciousness which something superconscient in us always enjoys. Otherwise, we could not exist, but which our conscious mentality has forfeited. So how we arrive at that position where we are divided from the awareness of what we really are, we'll spend a great deal of time on. But right now, let's find resonant within us this deep kinship with Satchit Ananda. We are that. But when we thus assert this unity of Satchit Ananda on the one hand, and this divided mentality on the other, we posit two opposite entities, one of which must be false if the other is to be held as true, one of which must be abolished if the other is to be enjoyed. Yet, it is in the mind and its form of life and body that we exist on earth, and if we must abolish the consciousness of mind, life, and body in order to reach the one existence, consciousness, and bliss, then a divine life here is impossible. So, logic, brainchild of the mind, would insist that if one is true, the other is false. If we want to live in a divine existence, then we have to hie away to this absolute, pure existence and house ourselves in that infinite consciousness, that undivided bliss which exists above. And here, in this divided world, we can have no part. He states it succinctly. We must abandon cosmic existence utterly as an illusion in order to enjoy or re-become the transcendent. From this solution there is no escape unless there be an intermediate link between the two, which can explain them to each other and establish between them such a relation as will make it possible for us to realize the one existence, consciousness, delight in the mold of the mind, life, and body. So again, this is a philosophic disquisition. Sri Aurobindo is approaching this in terms of what is conveyable to our rational intelligence, trying to explain what these great experiences are in a language that the mind can understand. And so this mind demands some explanation. How can we link that absolute unity to this disparate universe here? How do we go from oneness to diversity? What is that link? Is it possible that there could be one? Sri Aurobindo says the intermediate link exists. We call it the supermind or the truth consciousness because it is a principle superior to mentality, supra-mental, super-mind, and exists, acts, and proceeds in the fundamental truth and unity of things, and not like the mind in their appearances and phenomenal divisions. So again, his attempt is to demonstrate how we can realize Satchit Ananda in our world and reveal it in the here and now, and found it upon a truth of unity which permits and does not abolish phenomena, but does not lean upon phenomenal division. So what is it that allows phenomena to come into being in this innate oneness? allows it to differentiate. And he says, it is this intermediate link of the supermind. And he says, again, because he's writing about philosophy here, the existence of the supermind is a logical necessity, arising directly from the position with which we have started. For in itself, Satchidananda must be a spaceless and timeless absolute of conscious existence that is bliss. So in the supramental, inherently, there must be the possibility of time and space, but in Satchidananda, there is none. It is unmanifest, even though conscious force is its nature. There's a semicolon there. But the world is, on the contrary, an extension in time and space, and a movement, a working out, a development of relations and possibilities by causality, or what so appears to us in time and space. By the way, that phrase, or what so appears to us, he added later as he revised the text. So he's not giving an absolute force to the idea of causality. He's conditioning it, and he'll come back to that point later as well. What he's referring to when he brings that up, the idea that time and space are projected from the supramental as the ground upon which the oneness is translated into diversity. That is the hint. It's also here the notation of causality, a reference to the predetermining vision of the divine consciousness. One causes the other. We have the result of a universe because there is a motivation within the divine consciousness to move out. The result of that intent is the manifest universe. So that kind of causality is there at the beginning. And he writes, the true name of this causality is divine law, and the essence of that law is an inevitable self-development of the truth of the thing that is, as idea, in the very essence of what is developed. It is a previously fixed determination of relative movements out of the stuff of infinite possibility. So let's back up and remember what the Vedic equivalents were when he cited them in earlier chapters. That divine law is founded on a real idea, Rita Chit. That idea establishes as it creates form, a boundary, which is self-harmonized. There may be a self-development of a truth, but it is self-ordained, seen, and done within the scope of what it wishes. What it creates, what it brings, fashions as a becoming, is held within the context and the continent of its own being. It does not escape it. It does not go off on an independent existence. It is always held within it. So Rita Chit, the real idea, which creates, also enforces the order by which the manifestation proceeds. So it is a previously fixed determination of relative movements out of the stuff of infinite possibility. Previously fixed because it occurs within the consciousness of this supramental poise. And so, as it has seen, it has determined it will be. That which thus develops all things must be a knowledge will or conscious force. For all manifestation of universe is a play of the conscious force, which is the essential nature of existence. Now, through this paragraph, there's been a good deal of revision. One of these sentences, for instance, back up a little bit, read, the name of this causality is law, and the essence of law is an inevitable self-development. But he wanted to amend that a bit. The true name is divine law, not just the law that we might interpret as governing matter, life, mind, where we live and move, but he's speaking about that world. He's speaking specifically, you might say, cosmogonically, about that first universe which exists above. So that idea is self-realizing. So he writes, that which thus develops must be a knowledge will, originally, and then he changes it to say, that which thus develops all things must be a knowledge will or conscious force. Then he had written, for it is a play of the conscious force. For existence is a play of the conscious force, which is the essential nature of existence. Well, you can see he's changed that. For all manifestation of universe is a play of the conscious force. So he's improving upon the language. He's revising it in a way that shapes it, gives us a better sense of which part of the universe he's speaking to. Universe above, universe here. So he continues now, but the developing knowledge will cannot be mental, for mind does not know, possess, or govern this law, but is governed by it, is one of its results, moves in the phenomena of the self-development, and not at its root, observes as divided things the results of the development, and strives in vain to arrive at their source and reality. Moreover, this knowledge will which develops all must be in possession of the unity of things and must out of it manifest their multiplicity. But mind is not in possession of that unity. It has only an imperfect possession of a part of the multiplicity. He's trying to establish here that mind cannot be the creator of the cosmos. It has to be something which can contain it all. It must be a comprehensive consciousness, which is capable both of holding within and manifesting without loss, without partition, all becomings, all forces, all experiences. And the mind, as we can see in our own experience of it, does not really have that kind of knowledge, does not have that kind of power, that kind of control, understands, experiences only a slice of all of existence around it. So it is limited in every way. It is limited in its own existence, in its own power of knowledge, its own experience of delight. So, consciousness is conscious force, and it's essential and comprehensive. Mind moves in divided phenomena. Conscious force manifests as knowledge will. Conscious force refers back to Satchidananda, and again, it's unity, it's absolute oneness above. But as conscious force leans towards existence, it manifests as knowledge will in the supermind, got it? And that develops the universe on a basis of unity. The multiplicity arises within the unity as a manifestation of this knowledge will. This knowledge knows the oneness, but wills the diversity to come into being without abrogating the oneness or the unity. And still, delight is the experience of all moving in this supramental cosmos. And now he continues, therefore, there must be a principle superior to the mind which satisfies the conditions in which mind fails. Mind is not the creator. No doubt it is Satchidananda itself that is this principle, but Satchidananda, not resting in its pure, infinite, invariable consciousness, but proceeding out of this primal poise, or rather upon it as a base, and in it as a continent, into a movement which is its form of energy, an instrument of cosmic creation. So it uses this primary poise of the supramental to establish the all-containing ground upon which the manifestation will move. Originally, that sentence read, I don't mean to confuse the issue, but just in case you're interested in what was in the aria, it read, but moving out into a subordinate movement which is its form and instrument. So by writing, but proceeding out of this primal poise, well, we then know that he's talking about that first poise of the supramental consciousness, the comprehending, or rather upon it as a base, because it understands everything, it stands under everything, and in it as a continent, so all things exist within its oneness, into a movement which is its form of energy, because remember, it's not just being, it's not just this vast container, but it's also energetic. It is filled with Shakti, Chit Shakti. And that is the instrument of the cosmic creation. So, now to continue with the paragraph. Consciousness and force are the twin essential aspects of the pure power of existence. Knowledge and will must therefore be the form which that power takes in creating a world of relations in the extension of time and space. So, time and space arise first in the supramental consciousness, and they are an expression of the groundwork of the world conceived by the knowledge and executed by the will. This is that power of Chit Shakti moving through knowledge and will to establish the groundwork, the basis of the universe. This knowledge and this will must be one, infinite, all-embracing, all-possessing, all-forming, holding eternally in itself that which it casts into movement and form. The supermind, then, is being, moving out into a determinative self-knowledge which perceives certain truths of itself and wills to realize them in a temporal and spatial extension of its own timeless and spaceless existence. So the Chit Shakti expresses itself as knowledge will in the supermind, and time and space arise from this movement. Determinative word means that which sets limits or boundaries. We're leaving aside the idea of determinism here and not trying to insist upon a predetermined, prior, fated end of a beginning. He's speaking here more about the boundaries that this knowledge will sets on the infinite. So this, going back to the first paragraph, where he used the term Maya, in Vedic again, and not in an Advaitic Vedantic sense, is that power of the divine consciousness which takes the infinite and translates it into a limited but pregnant form of itself. So always that manifestation refers back to its parent, back to the oneness of Satchidananda. And the determination is, in a sense, the formation, what we would call later the nama and the rupa. It has a name, and the name signifies what it is, and it has a rupa, a form, and the form defines what it is, delimits itself against the background of the infinite. So to continue, whatever is in its own being takes form as self-knowledge, as truth consciousness, as real idea, and that self-knowledge being also self-force fulfills or realizes itself inevitably in time and space. And as we've seen before, inevitably means that which cannot be avoided. What is meant to be is. Not a potentiality, but an actuality. It is, as the Chambers Dictionary says, meaning what is exactly right. Inevitably is what must be exactly so in time and space. So here again, a clutch of Vedic terms which are pregnant and powerful, thrown into English translation to speak to us about what this supramental consciousness is. And so, we go on. This then is the nature of the divine consciousness, which creates in itself all things by a movement of its conscious force and governs their development through a self-evolution by inherent knowledge will of the truth of existence or real idea which has formed them. So it is always within itself that this creation occurs. Now, there's no externality to this divine consciousness. And its knowledge will is inherent. Inherent means sticking fast. It means what is inseparable from or natural to. This knowledge will of the truth of existence sticks to itself, doesn't get lost. And it's a real idea. Conceptions in the divine consciousness have the force of existence behind them, so they are self-realizing. As soon as they are conceived, they have the power to execute. So, whether singly or multiply, what is envisioned in the divine consciousness is harmoniously executed perfectly. The being, Sri Aurobindo writes, that is thus conscient is what we call God. And he must obviously be omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. So, must be everywhere, must be all-knowing, and must be all-powerful. Omnipresent, for all forms are forms of his conscious being, created by its force of movement in its own extension as space and time. Omniscient, for all things exist in his conscious being, are formed by it and possessed by it. Omnipotent, for this all-possessing consciousness is also an all-possessing force and all-informing will. And this will and knowledge are not at war with each other as our will and knowledge are capable of being at war with each other, because they are not different, but are one movement of the same being. Knowledge and will are one, and so cannot fight. In the divided mental world, there is division, there is the perception of this good and that bad. My knowledge might not be able to enforce my will. That power may not have wisdom to act, but will act anyway and achieve a poor end. Remember the context in which Sri Aurobindo is writing here late in 1915 is the Great War, what we call World War I. So war was a mighty issue, a large issue. So here he is writing about the supreme harmony in the supramental consciousness, while there is every manner of conflict in human kingdom. He continues, nor can they be contradicted by any other will, force, or consciousness from outside or within. For there is no consciousness or force external to the One. And all energies and formations of knowledge within are not other than it, but are merely play of the one all-determining will and the one all-harmonizing knowledge. In this supramental consciousness, there is no outside. It is all the world. There is only the experience of oneness, even in multiplicity. Each knows the all for the same self. All know that each are that same self. All act in harmony, spontaneously, without having to seek it, without having to construct it. There is one all-determining will, but it acts from multiple centers. And one all-harmonizing knowledge, but it exists in all beings and as the one great being. Division is impossible in that state of awareness and being. What we see, he writes, as a clash of wills and forces, because we dwell in the particular and divided and cannot see the whole, the supermind envisages as the conspiring elements of a predetermined harmony, which is always present to it because the totality of things is eternally subject to its gaze. So, what is secretly true of us here, that we are conspiring. You know the term conspire means to breathe together. So a vast conspiracy means that we're all in it together. We have this great plan that we want to realize. And so we've largely forgotten it. We come down here, we forget who we are. We stumble upon each other, we meet, there's a vague remembrance. I know I'm supposed to do something with this person. But there, everything is self-fulfilling, obvious, and enriching. Even so, if we take our time getting to the goal, we know the goal is predetermined. We enjoy every delicious moment in the supramental being. Here, in the divided nature that we have, we think this being is here, that being is there. We experience alienation. We've lost ourselves in the flow of time. We don't exist in the one. We don't know what's coming. We're caught in the moment. We've become insentient. We've become dull. We don't experience bliss. So we don't have that sense, but yet something persists in us. That secret soul knows that we're gonna get there. So Sri Aurobindo is here, considering the active poise of the divine supramental consciousness. But when we are enclosed in the particular, when we're stuck in our own finite, seemingly divided self, the mind fails to perceive and share in that totalizing harmony, which is the very nature of the supramental consciousness. So we can see the gulf between what our experience is and what that is. That's the great consciousness. This cannot be what we have, the determining creative consciousness which constructs the world. And now on to a different poise. Whatever be the poise or form its action takes, this will always be the nature of the divine consciousness. Speaking of the supramental. But its existence being absolute in itself, its power of existence is also absolute in its extension, and it is not therefore limited to one poise or one form of action. We, human beings, are phenomenally a particular form of consciousness subject to time and space, and can only be in our surface consciousness, which is all we know of ourselves, one thing at a time, one formation, one poise of being, one aggregate of experience. And that one thing is for us the truth of ourselves, which we acknowledge. All the rest is either not true or no longer true because it has disappeared into the past out of our ken, or not yet true because it is waiting in the future and not yet in our ken. So we've moved from the active poise, which he considered, now again to the containing poise of the supramental. He's referred here to a kind of spatial fixity, which we believe ourselves to be as kind of a fiction also, as well as fixity. We're not really just one thing at a time. We're always connected to the all. And really, we're only the one self which has multiplied itself endlessly to the view, no? So our real essential being is not divided and capable of being more than one small point of natural extension at a moment. But we don't experience ourselves like that when we peer out at the world through the mental lens. That's the nature of its difficulty. He continues, but the divine consciousness is not so particularized nor so limited. It can be many things at a time and take more than one enduring poise even for all time. So we've moved out of spatial fixity into temporal placement, comparing and contrasting what is natural to the supramental to exist in the whole flow of eternity as it becomes sempiternity, as it unrolls itself in time, which always contains the eternal now, but stretches back without losing it, all that is in the past, and knows already all that is in the future, and is enjoying the ride, every bit of it, along the way. I think a wonderful sentence. We find that in the principle of superminded self, it has three such general poises or sessions of its world-founding consciousness. The first founds the inalienable unity of things. The second modifies that unity so as to support the manifestation of the many in one and one in many. The third further modifies it so as to support the evolution of a diversified individuality, which, by the action of ignorance, becomes in us at a lower level the illusion of the separate ego. So, the first poise essentially is that unity, the ground of being, of Satchit Ananda emerging into the potency of manifestation. Primarily unity stands there. The second poise is a multiple oneness, where diversity and oneness are in balance. Unity and diversity are in full harmony with each other. The third poise, he suggests, is leaning towards a diversified individuality. So that means that each individual can feel the truth of its own existence and deepen its subjectivity and lay stress upon that, not indeed forgetting the all, not indeed forgetting the solid oneness that unites everything, but still putting a stress on individuality. And it is that extended into the mind which arrives at the limitation of the dividing manas, mind force, and its action through the divided ego. So in a sense, it is seen above. The supramental already in a sense forecasts what will become true in the mental ground. I think this is a good place for us to pause this evening, and we'll take the rest of the chapter up next time. But again, today is the 29th of March, the date that Mother and Sri Aurobindo first met in 1914, 101 years ago. It was a first meeting. It was a recognition, because she saw, before ever she came to Pondicherry, what the nature of that divine consciousness was that Sri Aurobindo later called the supermind, or perhaps was already calling the supermind, and knew that she would play a role in its work, but knew that she was waiting for her true spiritual partner. When she saw Sri Aurobindo on this date in 1914, she instantly recognized him, down to the very cells in her body. They shared the silence of that immense consciousness. They shared its active poise. They shared its vision. And the aria is an organ by which they announced to the world that which they saw. A world evolving out of ignorance, out of division, towards oneness, towards bliss, reclaiming its ground in Satchidananda through the discovery of a divine consciousness lying just beyond the borders of the mind. If we can get to the top of our nature presently, we can leap into that. But first, we have to go inside and rediscover our soul. So our first movement is inwards. Their first realizations were inwards. And then they rose in consciousness, higher and higher. Each ascent meant a new descent, so that they brought back the riches of what they found in that splendor above and invested it in the world to transform it. Their meeting was the beginning of an unbreakable partnership, a continuation of a promise that had been made in ages past. So this date returning, the birthday of many of our friends, we have several friends who are born on this happy date, all of them conjoined to this work, is one for our celebration. And if you would permit me to read a passage from Savitri, this is actually when Satyavan and Savitri meet. This is from the Book of Love. Hooves trampling fast, wheels largely stumbling, seized. The chariot stood like an arrested wind. And Satyavan looked out from his soul's doors and felt the enchantment of her liquid voice fill his youth's purple ambience and endured the haunting miracle of a perfect face. Mastered by the honey of a strange flower mouth, drawn to soul spaces opening round a brow, he turned to the vision like a sea to the moon, and suffered a dream of beauty and of change, discovered the aureole round a mortal's head, adored a new divinity in things. His self-bound nature foundered as in fire. His life was taken into another's life. The splendid, lonely idols of his brain fell prostrate from their bright sufficiencies, as at the touch of a new infinite, to worship a Godhead greater than their own. An unknown imperious force drew him to her. Marveling, he came across the golden sward. Gaze met close gaze, and clung in sight's embrace. A visage was there, noble and great and calm, as if encircled by a halo of thought, a span and arch of meditating light, as though some secret nimbus half was seen. Her inner vision, still remembering, knew a forehead that wore the crown of all her past, 2 eyes, her constant and eternal stars, comrade and sovereign eyes that claimed her soul, lids known through many lives, large frames of love. He met in her regard his future's gaze, a promise and a presence and a fire, saw an embodiment of aeonic dreams, a mystery of the rapture for which all yearns in this world of brief mortality, made in material shape his very own. This golden figure given to his grasp hid in its breast the key of all his aims, a spell to bring the immortal's bliss on earth, to mate with heaven's truth our mortal thought, to lift earth hearts nearer the eternal sun. In these great spirits now incarnate here, love brought down power out of eternity to make of life his new undying base. His passion surged, a wave from fathomless deeps. It leaped to earth from far forgotten heights, but kept its nature of infinity. On the dumb bosom of this oblivious globe, although as unknown beings we seem to meet, our lives are not aliens, nor as strangers join, moved to each other by a causeless force. The soul can recognize its answering soul across dividing time, and on life's roads, absorbed, rapt traveler, turning, it recovers familiar splendors in an unknown face, and touched by the warning finger of swift love, it thrills again to an immortal joy, wearing a mortal body for delight. There is a power within that knows beyond our knowings. We are greater than our thoughts, and sometimes earth unveils that vision here. I mentioned some weeks back our dear friend, brother, companion, Dr. P.K. Ramchandra. He has left his body on the 25th of March this year, after spending about a month slowly preparing himself for the transition. He set aside his mortal frame. We think it's too early for him to go. But he has made a deep compact, and a conspiracy with the Divine Mother to set aside a physical frame that was no longer capable of supporting a great action upon this earth. Ram was a deep being. He had the quickest of intelligences, but he had the vastest of souls. He sat in the center of the ashram dispensary. Its soul, its central silence, in all things spun around him. Sooner or later, everybody in the ashram made an ambit around our Ram. Every problem that came up, technical, human, emotional, physical, intellectual, was brought to Ram for resolution. And he would quietly nod his head, smile, a sweet chuckle, and then he would impart some hidden harmony that he happened to have with him, which would restore order. Beautiful and gracious, kind, serene. He was a model citizen for the ashram. I hope that people bore his exemplary behavior in a way that recorded itself in their nature, because they will need it in his absence. In a sense, he is not absent. In a sense, he is with us yet. As Sri Aurobindo wrote, "The living whom we name as dead." Still, he can commune with us from above. He is taking a break. He is taking a pause in his eonic labor. And he will return refreshed, invigorated, and resume his rounds upon this world. We need him. We wait for him. Send him love, send him peace, send him light. But they will be an added richness, because he already has all those things. He is not suffering. He is housed in a harmonious peace. Ram consciously departed, and he is in a field of felicity. Beautiful, regnant, and preparing for a long slumber. He has only a little more work to do in setting this thing here and that thing there. And he'll take a deep breath and then come. Come. Here. Where else is there for us to go? As long as our work isn't finished here, as long as we have not made Satchit Ananda, the discovered law of our being, we have not finished. He is happy. I cannot but be happy. I'm grateful for all that he did and all that he gave. He was here in this very place when the center was founded. As long as Ram was in America, every darshan day he found his way here. If he had to drive 16 hours in a rattletrap car, or spend enormous sums of money to be able to fly from St. Louis here, he would come. And something of his being has always remained. He has always felt a deep connection and kinship to the Integral Knowledge Study Center. Truly, we are soul brothers. We, all of us, I don't just simply refer to his close connection to me, but to you. So, I honor this great being, this quiet man who never drew attention to himself, never asked for anything, but gave plenty. What an example. What a beautiful spirit. Ram, we love you. I don't know what name next we'll call you by, but I look forward to it. So to you all of us, just a moment. I have something I want to read to you. Again from Savitri. Let Sri Aurobindo have the last word. All here is a mystery of contraries. Darkness, a magic of self-hidden light. Suffering, some secret rapture's tragic mask, and death, an instrument of perpetual life. Although death walks beside us on life's road, a dim bystander at the body's start, and a last judgment on man's futile works, other is the riddle of its ambiguous face. Death is a stair, a door, a stumbling stride the soul must take to cross from birth to birth, a grey defeat pregnant with victory, a whip to lash us towards our deathless state. The inconscient world is the spirit's self-made room, eternal night, shadow of eternal day. Night is not our beginning nor our end. She is the dark mother in whose womb we have hid safe from too swift awaking to world pain. We came to her from a supernal light. By light we live, and to the light we go. Namaste. Jai Ma. And thank you